F1 Manager is back for a second year with improvements across the board. There are new features, and some features have been tweaked to make them function a little bit better. But whether this is your second F1 Manager game or your first, jumping into a new career mode can be slightly overwhelming with all of the different options and features available. In this video, I'm going to run through my top 10 beginner tips for F1 Manager 23, and these can be applied in both the career mode and the new race replay mode. There are a lot of important decisions and gameplay features that all add up to create the optimal F1 Manager 23 experience. The sheer amount of information and content can be a little overwhelming, but the main thing with this game is to just take your time, and that leads me perfectly onto my first top tip, and that is to pause often and take your time. With so much going on in F1 Manager 23, it's important to take everything at your own speed. Try not to rush through the off-track activities such as developing your car, your drivers or your facility, and equally take your time while participating in a Grand Prix weekend. F1 Manager 23 allows us to pause the game at any time, which can be important when faced with split-second decisions. Unlike real-world race engineers who need to make decisions on when to pit and what the best race strategy is in real time, we get the luxury of being able to pause the action to make critical decisions. This is really useful if it starts to suddenly rain or if there's a safety car. And in these scenarios, I would recommend pausing the game instantly to assess what has just happened and what the best strategy call is. In some cases, the game will actually pause for you automatically to give you time to make some decisions. F1 Manager 23 has introduced mid-session saves for the first time, which means you can save your progress throughout a race weekend. This only emphasises taking your time even more, as you aren't necessarily under pressure to complete a race in a single game session. Now, my second top tip is to use the new race replay mode essentially as a practice mode. This is one of the new features that's been added to F1 Manager 23, and it allows you to jump into any race that has already happened in real-world F1 and try to alter the result. You can take any team on the grid and start in the actual position they started for a race. From there, you can set the race strategy for both cars and take control of the team throughout that race. While this is a fun addition to the game and a quicker way to jump in and start racing, it also serves as the perfect testing ground. In race replay, there are far less consequences for messing up a race strategy compared to doing it in career mode. So why not use this game mode to get both accustomed to the mechanics in F1 Manager 23 and also test different strategies. You can replay the same race multiple times, choosing different strategies each time to see how the outcome changes. This can give you a lot of information to take into the career mode, such as how tyres behave at different points throughout a race. You can even use the race replay mode to run a practice race before you reach that event in career mode. Say you're coming up to Monaco in your career, well, why not head into the race replay mode and play through a Monaco race to test your strategy? My next top tip is to not skip sessions in career mode. One really important area of a race weekend in F1 Manager 23 are the practice sessions. While in F1 23 we might skip the practice sessions to jump right into qualifying or a race, in F1 Manager 23 these sessions are crucial to your success in a race. The practice sessions let you tweak your car setup, which should really be your main focus during all three practice sessions. Improving your car setup for both cars as well as your driver's confidence will help them perform better during the race. There are a range of bonuses that you can earn during a practice session which are dictated by the driver preparation percentage. The closer to 100% you get your driver preparation, the more of a bonus will be applied heading into qualifying and the race. Now, the driver prep is a combination of three different practice goals, and these are your car setup satisfaction, your track acclimatization, and your car parts knowledge. Now, the car setup satisfaction is by far the most crucial bonus to focus on, as it offers the highest amount of performance gain. This can be earned by adjusting your driver's car setup throughout the three sessions, and the closer you get to 100% with each driver's setup, the higher your driver preparation will be. The track acclimatization is the overall knowledge of the track for each driver, and this is increased simply by spending time on track. The more laps your drivers put in, the faster your track acclimatization will rise. And also, if you run longer stints during practice, the track acclimatization will increase at a faster rate than, say, multiple short stints. This is one of the easiest bonuses to unlock during the sessions, and you should really be at 100% track acclimatization for both drivers by the end of practice 3. Finally, your driver's car parts knowledge is the final performance bonus, and this is more of a passive bonus as it's dictated by how long your driver spends with the parts on their car. The more laps a driver gets in using a specific car part, the higher their knowledge will be. For example, if you give one driver a brand new front wing, a new floor and a new rear wing, it will lower their car parts knowledge. Then over time, the more that driver races with those specific parts, the higher the car parts knowledge will be. Again, once your driver is 100% happy with the car parts, you'll earn additional driver preparation. Now, because you have to participate in all 3 practice sessions to increase these, I'd always recommend actively playing each session if possible. However, if you are short on time, you can simulate and skip a session entirely, and this will move you on to the next session, but the skipped session will still be simulated. This will simulate your driver running through their practice program, and it will reward them with some driver preparation. The only catch is that the bonuses for track acclimatization and car setup will be limited compared to if you actually played the session yourself. So you'll always earn less bonuses when simulating a session. Now, before I move on to my next tip, I do want to talk about driver confidence because this is a new kind of function to F1 Manager and overtakes what used to be the performance bonuses. This will change throughout the race weekend and it dictates how well your driver will perform during a race. Higher confidence will lead to more success when asked to perform certain tasks such as an overtake, but if your driver has lower confidence, they're less likely to succeed when performing these tasks, and driving too aggressively with low confidence can actually cause them to make mistakes easier than a driver with higher confidence. Much like performance bonuses in last year's game, driver confidence applies a temporary stat boost or penalty to your drivers. You can improve driver confidence by meeting your practice goals. The track acclimatization, the car setup satisfaction, and the car parts knowledge all help to increase your confidence. While I'm talking about practice sessions, my next tip is to always complete a long first stint in practice. One of the best ways to give yourself a head start on both car setup and track acclimatization is to run a long stint at the start of each practice session. A longer first stint will give your driver's track acclimatization a real boost right away. The best way of doing this is to set your driver's stint length to around 20 to 25 laps and choose a set of hard and sometimes medium tyres. This will always trigger the driver's full set of setup feedback as well after around 15 or so laps. However, don't be tempted to pit your driver right away. Instead, keep them out until you hit around lap 20 or 25 to grab the extra track acclimatization bonuses. Now, my next tip is to actually try and save some tyres during a practice session. Your main goals during each practice session should be to try to get your driver as much track time as possible while working on your car setup. And this generally involves your driver being out on track a lot, which in turn uses a lot of tyres. But during a race weekend in F1 Manager 23, just like real world, you only get a set amount of tyres to use. Generally, you'll only have a few sets of each tyre compound, so making sure you have enough tyres for both qualifying and the race is important. Generally, you should aim to save at least one brand new unused set of medium tyres for the race, and at least 2 sets of unused soft tyres for qualifying, although the more the better. So which tyres should you actually run during a practice session if you've got to save tyres for the race and quali? We'll try to use each tyre to its fullest during each session. For example, you can get 2 relatively long stints out of a single set of hard tyres, and sometimes you can get 2 stints out of medium tyres. Don't just use them once and move on to a new set. So doing this will help you limit how many sets of tyres you actually use during a practice session, and you should really just remember to use each tyre to its fullest. Remember, practice sessions are not about setting fast lap times, so you can afford to run less aggressively on older worn tyres. While I'm still talking about practice sessions, my next top tip is all about car setups. This is one of the most crucial areas that can affect your driver's performance during a race. A good setup can be the difference between grabbing some points or finishing towards the back of the pack. So it's vitally important to learn how to get both drivers' car setups as close to 100% as possible. Now, I am dropping a video all about car setups, so I'll link to that in the description below. Go and check it out if you want to learn how to actually get each car setup to 100% every time. The process of mastering car setups in F1 Manager 23 is a mini-game all in itself. Essentially, it's a guessing game where you have to try and tweak each car setup option so that it falls within the perfect window. I won't touch on this too much, as mastering car setups is a process that takes 15 to 20 minutes to talk about all on its own. And as I mentioned, I've created that specific video, which again, I'll link in the description below. Now my next tip is actually about the race, and it's about choosing the right race strategy. Outside of mastering your car setup during practice sessions, the race strategy is the next most important thing to get right. Choosing when to pit your car, when to push, and how to react to the cars around you is vitally important to a successful race. At the beginning of every race, you'll be presented with a few different car strategies, and these are predefined and can give you a good starting point for choosing your own strategy. The race strategy screen will show your predicted tyre life throughout a stint. And one important thing to note when choosing or customizing your race strategy is your starting position. Where your driver is starting on the grid should heavily dictate your strategy. If you're starting nearer the front of the grid, you may want to opt for softer tyres to start the race on to maximise your race start. However, if you're starting nearer the rear of the grid, or you're likely to be stuck behind some slower cars, you may want to choose a longer first stint on slower tyres. The benefit of this approach is that you can potentially preserve your tyres during the first stint while you're running slower, and then save your faster tyres to the end of the race when you're likely to have more space on track. While changing your strategy, you can also set how aggressively your driver will push on each set of tyres. This is useful to ensure your driver is pushing or driving aggressively at the start of the race during this first stint. You can always change this manually during a race, and I'd really recommend you do so you don't feel locked into a certain driving style for a whole stint. During a race, things always change though, and you may have to adapt your race strategy. If your driver is doing well with their tyre life and saving tyres, you may want to extend your stint or pit later on, or you may look to undercut a slower car in front of you. These are decisions that you can look to make during a race, and again, if you're ever feeling pressured to make a quick decision, remember our first top tip, all about pausing the game and taking your time. Moving on from the race strategy, managing your driver's pace and tyre wear is my next top tip. It should be your primary focus during a race session, making sure that your driver doesn't push his tyres too hard and wear them out too early. However, if your driver is performing well on a set of tyres and making them last better than expected, you could do two things. You could either extend your stint or pit later, as I mentioned just now. Or you can set your driver to push harder and drive more aggressively, as this will burn some extra tyre life but also increase their pace. Using the tyre life display mid-race should be something that you look at quite often. The horizontal bars will show if a driver is doing better or worse on tyre wear than expected. If the white bar is trending higher than the coloured block, it means they're wearing their tyres slower, which is a good thing. If the white line is below the coloured block, it means they're wearing their tyres faster than expected. You can adjust the pace commands that you give your driver to dictate how much they push their tyres, whether they need to save their tyres a little bit longer. Now, moving away from the race weekend, my next top tip is to prioritise car testing between races. Testing is where you can develop new car parts, which will increase your overall performance throughout a season. Every year you get a certain allowance of testing hours, which is divided into MAU hours and wind tunnel hours. This allowance resets every 2 months or so and is defined by the ATR period. The length of your current ATR period can be seen in the development screen. You should always use all of your development time before the ATR period expires, as it doesn't carry over and you'll simply lose potential to develop and research new parts. You can choose to develop new parts and use a combination of wind tunnel and MAU hours to improve that part you're developing. And I'd highly recommend using the development in bigger batches to develop car parts that have a bigger impact on performance. This will reward you with better performance over time than researching smaller improvements more often. My final tip is all about planning your season in advance. You can see all of the upcoming races at any time, and you can delve into the race and circuit information to see how each track differs. The circuit information screen will show you which car parts have the biggest impact on performance at each track. This information will really let you plan your development strategy in advance. Say for example, you know that in a few races time you have tracks such as Spa and Monza, which are two high-speed circuits. You may want to develop some car parts a few weeks before that, targeted towards improving high-speed performance. Planning ahead like this can really help structure your car development throughout the year and maximise your performance at specific circuits. And that'll round out our top tips for F1 Manager 23. Now hopefully these tips will help you navigate certain areas in this year's F1 Manager game, And mastering each area of career mode from car development to race strategy takes time, but will lead you towards winning that elusive Drivers' and Constructors' Championship. While playing F1 Manager 23, always remember my first tip: take your time and enjoy the game at your own pace. Let me know in the comments below if you have any tips that I've missed, and let me know what teams you guys are playing as during your career mode. But for now guys, I will see you on track.